get the industry, a coordinated industry response to all the requirements. So that's me.
Howard.
You're on mute,
You're
Howard.
on mute, Howard.
Well, there's a fire in the pot straight away, isn't it? Sorry about that. Yeah, so morning, everybody. My name's Howard Hall. I'm a director and head of what we call the safety management for Tetra Tech, formerly WIG, encompassing in the UK, Hawley, RPS, Kofi, and NDY. So we're sort of property consultancy going from greenfield through to sort of managed estates. I look after what we call the assurance governance, the CDM, and with an overview of the fire safety and the compliance services. I've been talking to George now for a couple of years about sort of the integration of BIM software and the ability to demonstrate assurance and governance for the Building Safety Act. I may come across as a slight cynic, but I think I'll be in good hands here on the basis the lack of secondary legislation and guidance I find quite astounding. I'm ex-enforcement, then I saw the bright side and went into commercial back in the early 90s. So I like the law, but at the moment I'm struggling with trying to understand how we are as an industry supposed to advise clients and also achieve the safety that we all want. So hopefully, I think my purpose is to try and give you the commercial tilt, but also the way that we are approaching it as a business and our interpretation of what we believe the law is to date. Thank you.
Thank you. Dave.
Hi there. Yeah, I'm Dave Williams from Origin Housing. I come from an IT and business change background, and about 2.5 years ago was asked to lead and program manage the Building a Safer Future program at Origin. So since then, I've been involved in looking at all aspects of complying with both Fire Safety Act and the Building Safety Act and tying all of the disparate work streams together across the entire business, so that not only is it just focused on everything being done by the building safety team, but that all areas of the business, from development through to housing services, through to asset management, through to compliance, to property maintenance, all understand that they have a role to play in managing the processes involved around the two acts, but also in making sure that the data is available, accurate and timely. So that's sort of my role here. Thanks.
Brilliant, thank you. And last but certainly not least, Chris.
Good morning. I'm a primary teacher from the late 60s. I got involved in fire safety after Grenfell, looking at personal emergency evacuation plans. I then tracked the draft building safety bill and produced a plain guide to that to help the politicians. I updated that for the bill, and in the summer I produced my plain guide to the Building Safety Act. No interpretation in it, but my unique selling point, if I have one, is I suppose I'm an expert in parliamentary process and legislation, having been in the Commons and the Lords for some 25 years, and so I attempt to justify the ways of God, i.e. the MPs and peers, to man. And I also, I'll take off my high-vis vest in a minute, but I think it's the people who wear high-vis vests with their boots on the ground and frequently up to their ankles in mud, where we really need to communicate with them, as well as the CEOs and other glitterati on this call. Thank you.
Great, Chris, thank you. Just a couple of housekeeping points. Use the chat, please. As you've seen, we're recording this meeting and we produce a high points document afterwards, probably early next week, which will be sent to all of you. And that will include comments made in the chat. So don't think it's wasted. If you've got something to say, please put it in there. Secondly, we're going to start, and momentarily going through these questions. We've had a lot of response from a number of people. I see Jarrett there with some excellent other questions, which will all be pulled together with what we come out with today into a document which will be published and which will be pushed forward to the DLUC committee and to the HSE. After the second or third question, we're going to have an intermission where it will be audience involvement. So nobody's going to sit back quietly, trust me. George will be running a series of polls. It'll be just like being on the Generation Game or something. So we have that to look forward to once we've got through some of the nitty-gritty. So without further ado, Jess, can you put up the first question? No, not that question. We're not doing the polls yet. You've just spoiled my surprise. Is there anybody there?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Right, can you take that one off and put the big questions up?
Yep.
That's for later. No. You can understand why we've had technical problems, can't you, all week? Just take the polls off.
Okay.
Please. There you go, George. You wanted to do those at the beginning. The polls are still on the screen. We can close those ourselves.
Yeah, that's right, Richard. You need to
Close them yourself. Yeah, sorry. Okay, right. Can you blow that? There we go. Question 1. Now, this is for DLUC. As the transition arrangements for new building control requirements are being implemented, some of our colleagues have experienced challenges in engaging with local authority planners and building control, who have concerns about their current competence to deal with higher risk buildings, particularly on buildings that are being remediated. This is delaying progress on these schemes. Where the regulator outsources the gateway review to approved building control inspectors, is there a potential conflict of interest that could lead to an application being refused or delayed because more paid investigatory work is required? Right, that's quite an interesting one. I think there's 2 parts there, aren't there?
Yes.
Let me ask Dave. Do you want to step in first and give us your view on that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, funnily enough, I had a very similar conversation yesterday around the fact that particularly when submitting safety case reports, there's the way that the safety case report's going to be charged is based on a set fee plus an hourly rate. Now, there is an argument there that there is a potential conflict of interest from those people if they then have to outsource some of the building safety case report work to external people, that there's a conflict of interest in the number of hours they're likely to want to charge, you know, as opposed to the actual work involved. So you sort of, your hands are, you know, a bit tired as far as the cost of external people doing work on applications, not only in planning, but also when it comes to safety case reports. And I think that is a concern across the business. We all know that there aren't enough qualified people out there for all of this work that is likely to, come forward. And so there is a risk that there'll be a lot of people, a small pool of people making potentially quite a lot of money because of this new regime.
Yeah, thank you. Chris, you don't have to put your hand up because you're on the panel.
Okay, I won't then.
No, what do you want to say, Chris?
Well, the problem, and I'm quite used to reading some of the stuff that's coming out. There is a huge shortage, and I'm working with Yarrick on this, of diagrams. And if we saw exactly what the process was in a nice infographic and who was involved, at least we could all be talking off the same song sheet.
Yeah.
And the huge confusion, and it's not just to do with this particular issue, which is a really knotty one, but it's how do we put simple questions, or rather not simple, clear questions, to get clear answers. And I'll talk about diagrams on and off, I guess, throughout the morning.
Howard.
It's an interesting one. It's interesting to note that the building safety regulator, HSE, put a tender out about 6 months ago, looking for additional resource subcontracted to actually assist in the assessment of safety case reports. So they're trying to be proactive during this transition period. If anyone attended any of the HSE briefings that they did the weekly briefings up until October. Very interesting in the sense of it gave you access to their thinking, but also I think a lot of people left with the opinion that it's still a work in progress. There are clear transition arrangements in place, supposedly, where if you've got foundations in place, it remains in the local authority. If not, it goes towards the BA, the building safety regulator. Our concern is that there isn't the competence in the building safety regulator at the moment to actually assess. It's a new assessment scheme for the safety case, and there's always the fear of fees for intervention at £128 an hour to actually assess and review or intervene. So from that point of view, I think the advice we're trying to suggest to people is that you need to look at what competent in-house resource you've got to demonstrate the structural and the fire safety. If it also means that you look at additional AI, so approved inspectors or building control regulation sort of resource, it may be useful if you're the size of a business that can accommodate that. If not, you've got to be extremely careful. There is the PAS document that came out in July last year, which gives you some indication for the PD role. So there is some information out there. The key thing there, I think, is to assess quite clearly how comfortable you are with whatever you're going to be able to submit. And in the absence of any guidance, I think the impression is that there's going to be a case of suck and see, and it's going to be a learning curve for the next 3, 6, 12 months, while the BSR actually get themselves in a position where they can provide further guidance. I don't necessarily like the situation, but that's the situation we're in at the moment.
Okay. Have you got the number of the PAS at your fingertips?
If you just bear with me, as if by magic.
It's okay, you can put it in the chat, but
no, yeah, I'll put it in the chat anyway. But it came out last year, and this is the other thing I wanted to mention is obviously there's been a revision last week to the building regulations. So there's now a new principal designer role called principal designer building regulations. So the principal designer under CDM 2015, looking at the health and safety risks, significant risks. There's now a requirement for a PD to also look at the building regulation compliance level of any designs and as built that are achieved for Gateway 2 and Gateway 3. And that's based on the PAS document that came out in July last year. There was a consultation document. Most people consulted and commented that they didn't think it was feasible, but it has actually just been implemented. I can talk about that later if people wish, but there's information there. The key thing is just map exactly what you do, like a gap analysis in old words. of where your capability is and where you need to outsource, but then you need to be extremely careful on the demonstrable competence of whoever you're using. And the problem here is that because there's no strict guidance or templates, then if you're not careful, it could be an open checkbook. And that's a real concern that we have as a consultancy as well, because we like to be transparent with costing. But I'll pop the details of the PAS. What I'll probably do is send them all over to, there's a couple of other documents which I've got, which I'll send over to George and Richard so they can circulate after this meeting, yes?
Excellent. Yeah, that's great. Thank you. George.
I've
Debbie's got a hand up. Sorry, she wants to make a comment on.
Yeah, just picking up on Howard's point, and I put it in the chat. We have got AI capability now that can profile competency, can take the PAS standards and make them machine readable and aid gap analysis. That's possible now. What we have is a group of people leading a lot of these competency working groups and an industry competence committee that seem to have no desire to encourage technology to play in this space. Yeah, it's a big problem. So, you know, I'm happy to do a session. It'd be much more sensible if this was done collectively and rather than, you know, each organization picking this off for themselves. Yes. But right from the beginning, I went to Graham Watts and said, there's AI available now to deal with all of these competence standards. And now it doesn't matter, you know, if you're at the installer level, it's even worse because everyone's bringing building a new competence framework on another competence framework. Yeah. So more and more noise and chaos into the system. It's absolutely crazy.
George.
Yeah, I'd be interested just to, we've got a couple of designers and architects who I imagine will be considering the new role, the what's it called, Howard? The PD.
It's the Principal Designer Building Regulation, so it's PDBR.
Yeah. So Joe Stott, you're on the call. Joe, are you there?
I am, yes. Yeah.
Is it something that HR are considering?
Yeah, I think we're looking into it. Interestingly, I think it may be more of our kind of building surveying team who are looking at this kind of work.
Oh, that's interesting.
Those to our architects, yeah. So, but it's all up in the air at the moment. So.
Yeah, I've spoken to a couple of architects who are taking this role on. And one of the things that they're building into their process is how, because clearly they've got competence in terms of architects, the architecture side of things, but there's obviously other things like structure and building services and the like. And therefore that needs to be considered. And so that what they're doing is working out how they can verify that information. I saw Anna's just put her hand up as well.
Hi, everyone.
George,
Hi.
wait. Sorry, George, are you going to actually make a comment on the question?
Well, sorry, I apologise. Yeah, so yeah, I'm really talking to a lot of people to try and understand this particular question as to what the building control person is going to be doing, because the impact on gateways and the impact on landlords being able to continue for the building to be occupied are severe. And I agree really that we need to have something clearer and more explicit, that it's not a checklist, but it's something that we can maybe have some pre-prepared solutions for that allow people to navigate through this. So what sort of scenarios and what sort of things are people going to be asked about? Because then it means that people can be prepared. Because, you know, for example, if we consider O&Ms, the handover information that's required under Regulation 38 is really important stuff. it's not just fire, obviously, that's important from a health and safety point of view, but if we just zone in on regulation 38, that's something that could be quite easily checked. And if we then drill into one subset of that, which is like fire doors, we're finding that the quality of information that is actually being gathered, even though all of the briefings and all of the explanations have been done over the last couple of years, we're still finding no records of who installed things on brand new buildings. So installation and inspection information just hasn't been collected, or if it's been collected, it's not easily available. So I think we need to have some mechanism whereby the landlord can check to make sure that they've got the information that's needed before they embark on having somebody review it. Otherwise, as Howard was saying earlier, it could be an open checkbook and obviously overwhelm whoever's doing the checking.
Okay, thank you. Right, Anna, you had your hand up.
I really just wanted to answer George's question about architects delivering PD BSA role. We are delivering, or well, we're ready to start delivering, and we are starting to work on a couple of projects. It's early days yet, and in terms of competence, of course, we can't claim to have to be able to judge competence on sort of matters that involve engineering. So we are teaming up with engineering companies to be able to deliver that. So when it comes to MEP and structures and anything else that's very specific for that project, we will have to bring somebody on board who can then work with us to deliver that.
But you're prepared.
We're prepared. We think we're
Excellent.
prepared.
Excellent. We're not hearing that word very much.
What could possibly go wrong?
If I could just add to that, please. There's been a couple of recent briefings over this, and included sort of RICS, REBA, and all the sort of the main professional bodies, including sort of representatives from the HSE, BSR, and it was quite clear that they're expecting the organisational individual who is classed as the lead designer on any project, bearing in mind that this PDBR applies to all building projects, not just the high risk, to actually take the lead, to take the responsibility and accountability for this PDBR. In other words, confirming that the plans, designs, revisions as built are in accordance with all relevant legislation, inverted commas, the building regulations. So the professional bodies are currently creating registers for competent PDBR delivery. So one of the competence checks that individuals can do is that they need to make sure that when they're appointing lead designers, whether it's a lead architect or whether it's a lead designer if you're doing MEP, civils, others, electrical, IT, so any lead designer needs to be on their professional body's register for the PDBR. So there are some checks, and again, there's I can provide, in the next couple of weeks, I'll provide some more briefing documents through to this team quite happily, to this group that we're doing internally. The key thing for me is, beg your pardon, sorry.
If I could respond to Anna, I'm glad that you've found the silver bullet, Anna, but you have obviously come up with a process where you are engaging the people you need to support you in delivering.
Yeah.
Is there a diagram of that process that you've gone through, and would you be prepared to share it? Because the big issue, Anna, and I've been taken to task, and I've taken to task some of the really big companies where in one instance they had mapped every bit of the Building Safety Act in terms of changes that needed to be made to their contracts. I said, would you share it? And there was a deafening silence. And the problem is that this major company that I won't name, they got a whole team have done that. How does an SME or a medium-sized company go through that same process.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Paula.
Morning all. Sorry,
Hi
struggling to
there.
take my microphone off. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
I was just wanting to touch on the point of lead design, because that's something that's very close to my heart. We're struggling.
Paula, you're cracking up a bit.
Consultants about what,
But yeah, Paula,
can you hear me
you're,
now?
yes, that's better.
Yeah.
Just turn my camera off, that might be better.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're finding inconsistencies across our dealings with consultants about what the true understanding of the role of a lead designer is, and we're even struggling to get our consultants, our lead designers who have signed up, got the fees for the lead designer role as well as the architectural services, to actually come to the table and coordinate the deliverables of the other consultants. So there's a gap here, I think. First of all, are we fully aware of what the role of the lead designer is in old money? And are we fully aware of what the role of the lead designer is going to be moving forward in the context of now this principal designer building regulation outfit? I'm particularly interested in Anna's view as well, because it's really encouraging to hear that they're taking this seriously, and we get the shutters come down from many an architect who doesn't want to take on that risk.
Anyone from the panel want to answer Paula?
I don't mean to monopolise at all, but please tell me to shut up as and when. One of the practical steps that can be done is that the principal design under CDM is supposed to coordinate the health and safety risks of the design process and as built with the design risk register. And that should be sort of created at the different REBA stages and updated. So one easy sort of solution to an extent, so you can try and demonstrate compliance, is that you add building reg compliance to your design risk register, so you can then track against the individual disciplines. Now, obviously, that what the new legislation is implying is that should be a lead designer role, but in the absence of the lead designer or the lead architect understanding, appreciating, or delivering, if you add it to your design risk register, you then ask all those persons, all the design team, and all those people contributing to the design and to the revisions in REBA 5 to confirm that those are in accordance with the relevant legislation and specifically building regulations. What you're trying to do as the client, because obviously the default for this legislation like CDM is that if you don't appoint in writing, then the client will take the default responsibility, is demonstrate that you as a client have actually asked individuals and they've confirmed it's compliant. So there is the mechanism in place. Whether that's just a self-verification or it's a valid statement is down to the individual to make. But you as a client at least have actually asked the question and can demonstrate that you've sought competent response.
Okay, I want to move on to the next question actually, because we are going to run out of time. Tina, you've got your hand up. Have you got something brief?
It was just regarding 86441, and I know it's the implementation of 86441 is helping us in our delivery of the Building Safety Act. As anybody else looking at the same process, it's not defined as, it's not totally out there, but we're making it work for retrospective work. Just a thought on if anybody else is doing the same.
Certainly we're incorporating 8641 in what we're doing as well, Tina. So this is the fiery standard.
Yeah, I think it's also help us define the role of the principal contract designer. So from a contract administrator down to the principal designer, the clerks of works down to the main contractor, the subcontractor, and the full process mapping of who's taking responsibility of even checking the most simplest thing. So for example, when a sprinkler tank is installed in, we're asking everyone to create a blueprint of how that work's going to be conducted, who's checking at what point, the methodology of how it's going to be checked, in terms of whether it's photographic evidence or date and stamped, which is, I think we're just working it through in terms of what we think is best. It was just good to see if anybody else is doing anything very similar.
Okay, great. Well, please reply to Tina, put it in the chat, and we can include that in. I really need to move on to question 2. Can I ask the panel to be a little bit more focused on the question?
Cool.
Right, this is a question for DLUC. As part of the new ADB changes, we'd like more clarity on the specific purpose of the new second staircase. In the absence of any other technical guidance, there are varying interpretations and design solutions emerging on new schemes. This continues to keep a project at risk of non-approval until reviewed by both building control and LFB later in the design process, potentially adding costs and delays. Likewise, when do existing buildings trigger two staircases? If there are redevelopment works ongoing and application is made for a building warrant, for example, is there a risk of an existing building triggers a 2-staircase requirement? Chris, let me ask you first. Can we expect any further guidance on that?
Well, I'm not sure, and huge debate still about whether a second staircase is the best solution. And you know, we appear to be outliers globally on not having a second staircase, but will the further detailed guidance only emerge when the building safety regulator decides to approve or not a building?
So the guidance is by default, you're saying?
Well, this is the problem, that you know, our system is built on not doing something and then somebody, either a regulator or the court, deciding it's got to be done. And that's a very painful process and not the best way of going about it. I cannot see DLUC issuing any detailed guidance.
Right, okay, that's a takeaway. Any other member of the panel got something to say on that?
No, not really. I mean, other than it's a very valid question and one that needs answering. It definitely needs some guidance because it has an effect on builds that are already in progress, ones that are, you know, in the pipeline. It does have an effect on the profitability of buildings if you're taking out some space that you were looking to use for residential units to put in a, you know, a second staircase. So it has huge implications, and really we should be expecting to get guidance rather than just you'll do it. So I think it's a valid question. I don't think anyone here has probably got an answer to it.
No, from what Chris says, we're not going to get that guidance, it seems, doesn't it? Let me throw that out. Sorry, Chris, were you?
Well, just to say that, you know, we are 12 months off a general election.
Yeah.
And I think that, as we all saw yesterday, the government has other priorities.
Okay, let's throw that out to the floor. Has anybody else got any comments on that? Do they think it's a valid question? Do you think it's a valid question? Do you think it needs qualifying or adding to?
Can I quickly come in on there?
Absolutely, David.
Yeah, second staircase is fine. It's specific, you know, it's all about means of escape. It's not a grand entrance and exit place like the main staircase. It's a secondary means of escape, usually downwards. So possibly could the definition of what is required, we all know what's required. It's competent people have got to actually design buildings competently that are going to perform to specification. At the moment, we're seeing some horrendous situations with the uncovering that fire breaks, fire barriers, smoke barriers and all this have probably been omitted, haven't been put in the right places. So we cannot now rely on the integrity of the containment of fire. So we have to have escape route from buildings. So rather than second staircase, should we, it takes me way back to many decades ago. We always used to, you know, in local authority, when I was dealing with schemes, secondary means of escape. And that will incorporate staircase, but it also will incorporate some of the modern means of escape, the tubes, the nets, and all of these sort of things, and whatever. So it opens up a whole area of research, and I think BIM4Housing, the group that you know, we are here coming together, could explore this.
That's interesting, actually. Yeah, very much so. Very much so. It's possibly a working group, George.
Yeah, I think the second staircase was an outstanding political soundbite.
Yes.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Well, thanks. I'm not sure if it's any more than that.
No, but thanks, Chris. You've just voiced what was at the back of my mind on that. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks.
I spotted something probably 3 or 4 weeks ago where a designer, I can't remember, it was on LinkedIn, designer had come up with quite an innovative type of staircase that carried both ways, if that makes any sense at all. I can't remember the detail of it, but it seemed to protect. Yeah, do you remember that, David?
Yes, I looked at it. It was great. It's like a Rubik's cube. It's a staircases sort of work together in the same space. It's quite clever.
So there's stuff out there.
Yeah.
It just needs exploring and putting forward to the right people, clearly. Has anybody else got anything to say on this?
Thanks.
If somebody doesn't volunteer, I'm going to pick on someone. I'm going to pick on Bex.
You cruel.
I always pick on Bex, actually. So it would be a shame not to.
Oh, just turning on my thing.
Hi, Bex.
Hi, you're right. Is this in relation to second staircases then?
Yeah.
From a retrospective perspective, I don't believe you, because that's what I deal with as existing HRBs. It's not something we're considering because it's for new buildings. So I don't have a lot to say about second staircases.
I think let's move on to the next question, Richard.
Yeah, I thought you were the one that added the. I thought you were the one that put the second part of the question on, Bex.
Richard, sorry, could I jump in on this one, if you don't mind? Andy Cunningham, right for life.
Certainly. You
Richard,
can all jump in if you put your hand up.
Oh, sorry, I'm putting my hand up. There's a fantastic example of an entwined stair core that's in Barnet Homes, and it's called Upper Fosters. It's an amazing piece of civil engineering or building construction. It entwines itself, wraps around itself, so you don't lose any square footage on the shaft, for the want of a better word. It's a great example, and it just proves that it can be built quite easily and quite simply, and it creates 2 protective routes for 2 hours with concrete construction. So it works absolutely well. So it's already been built, and that was built in 1968, I believe. So it's been there for years and years and years, and still protecting people to this day. So I think that's a model that could be quite easily adopted and moved into the marketplace very, very simply, if we were going to go down the fire design engineering route for twin stair cores, if that helps.
It does help. Thank you. Bex.
I do remember the the reason why this was brought up, actually. Yes, so there's a certain level of redevelopment that is required on the HRBs, and it's whether under building control or the new regulations, whether there's any trigger on the level of work that is undertaken in the HRB that would require second staircase to be considered as part of that. So it's not overly clear, but there is a building control element to it. So just asking that, really.
No, that's clear. I think we're saying the question's certainly valid, aren't we? Let's move through to question 3. Just can you scroll down a bit? Where are we? Great. Question for the HSE and the BSR. excuse me, the guidance for safety case report states it should be updated when improvement work is carried out to manage building safety risks. Incomplete or incorrect information about safety critical systems and assets present a significant risk and should be included in the safety case report. As we understand it, there's general acceptance that existing HSFs and their supporting O&Ms are poor is no defence, and the responsible person needs to state how they will address major shortcomings, initially via their latest fire and risk assessment for that building and in as-built records. Given that this will be a progressive improvement, just as the physical replacement of cladding or fire doors should lead to an updated safety case report, should improvements to the existing key building information about safety critical assets also trigger an updated report? The panel, who's the panel? George?
Yeah, so this really, I think, is speaking to the fact that the safety case report is an output from a safety management system that needs to be a live, active system that's constantly being refreshed as risks and mitigations of risks are carried out. Now, what this is doing, it's identifying in August, the requirement is for in the amendments that came through in August, there's a requirement for the landlord to confirm that they've got all the relevant fire safety information or information about fire safety assets. And invariably, quite frankly, they don't. And they have to identify what they are doing to correct that. And it's no longer acceptable that health and safety files or O&Ms are poor. They've got to be a plan. So what this is basically saying is if somebody is improving the information about maybe compartmentation, then that should generate an updated safety case report. And that's really, it's a matter of looking at things, not just from a point of physical improvements to the building, but improvements to the digital building. So that
anybody else on the panel got something to say on that?
My comment really would be is that it's whereas the health and safety file and completion of a project is a as is, and here's what you need to sort of review and manage as significant risks. The safety case report should just be seen as a live document as to how you are managing those risks. You're making an assumption that the building you've been given is compliant and safe. And the safety case report you submit for occupation will highlight basically the variances of resident occupation and behaviour. And then really it's your management systems, resident engagement, mandatory reporting if need be, that will just needs to be a live document, and most people are viewing it as a live document. So there are criteria where you need to update and you need to report, but it should just be what's your management system for managing adverse behaviour and or structural or fire safety issues within the building as an ongoing, on the assumption that what you have is sound and acceptable.
Well, I would agree with that. It needs to be a live document, but there needs to be a way of recording the amendments to it, because anyone coming to an amended document, unless they can clearly see the amendments, they're going to have to start from scratch.
That's just a simple log. If you take any sort of any management system you have, if you've got any sort of ISO or whatever system you want to operate, accredited system, you'll always have a bibliography at the front where you will log all your changes. And the beauty of the safety management system you'll have in place, the safety case report, is that you're just going to be logging the incidents that you believe are significant or have materially affected the safe occupation of that building. And as long as you keep that log going, as long as they can see a remediation or a planned action towards that remediation, that's your demonstrable governance that you need to sort of provide back to the BSR, should they believe it's a mandatory reporting or it's an incident or it's a complaint from residents. So to me, there's nothing different from any other management system that you operate where you keep an active log.
Well, let's throw this out into the floor. Has anybody else got some comments on this? I'm sure you must have.
Yes.
You got your hand up, Matt Hodges Long.
Yeah, hi. Well, yeah, so I was just going to pick up on what's just been said, actually. I don't really think this is a question. It's written in the legislation of what you need to do. You know, if there's a material change, then that would feed through from mandatory occurrence reporting or complaints into a revision of the safety case in terms of mitigations, and then that would lead to an updated report. What isn't clear at the moment is what level of update to the safety case report triggers effectively formal notification to the regulator.
Yeah.
So if I change somebody's telephone number, is that material? Or, you know, it's a bit like the sort of mandatory occurrence reporting. There's a clear review now on what is a mandatory occurrence. What is a reportable update to the safety case that requires formal notification to the regulator? Because I think at the moment it's worded very vaguely around sort of almost an everything kind of wording. I haven't got the exact wording in front of me, but I don't think that's going to be practical. So that would be the clarification I would want to see, is to say at what point, if is it a time-based update, is it a materiality-based update to the regulator? What do they want to see from the PAB? Would be my question.
Dave Williams.
Hi. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just on this, to delineate between the safety case report and the safety case. The safety case report is a snapshot. The safety case is the live management of that building. And so therefore, when you submit that safety case report, as part of that, you have to show that you've got a safety management system in place to manage ongoing risks in that building. Otherwise, you won't get your certificate. So basically, they're looking for a safety management system, and they do say you can use the HSE model, which is Plan, Do, Check, Act, for those who are familiar with that, which is basically a cyclical review all of the time of, you know, changes to that building, management of that building, and that would include things like, you know, an updated fire risk assessment, etc., ongoing maintenance and servicing. All of that follows that cyclical path. They do say that you can use other options like 9997 or ISO 45001, but the idea is you have to have a safety management system. We're not talking an IT system, we're talking a business system of managing the risks to that building. And what they are saying is it should be proportionate. It should be managing maintenance, inspection and testing. It should be measuring, sort of checking on management of change. And there should also be performance monitoring as part of that safety management system. So the idea is that in theory, you send your snapshot, which is your safety case report, which then evidences that you're managing that building and that you're going to be managing that building, safely on an ongoing basis. And therefore, in theory, that safety case report doesn't need to be resubmitted or rechanged for that 5 years, unless you're then doing something which is a major change to that building, which of course would then go through, building control, etc. And then you would need, post a major change to that building, an updated safety case report supplied. So,
great.
And then with the mandatory occurrence reporting, I've been spending quite a bit of time on this, and I've been doing some testing of the system. But when you read the guidance, it is about something that an incident that's occurred which
Dave, can we be brief? We need to move on.
Yeah, sure. But the guidance is out there. The basic guidance on mandatory occurrence reporting is out there. It's probably not massively publicly available yet, but it is. I have seen it, and it will explain the differences there and what is an MOR and what isn't. So
excellent. David Sharp, you had your hand up.
Yeah. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I was just listening to the last person talking. He pretty well hit it on some of it on the nail. But this is my first visit to this meeting, so bear with me just for a moment. It's very similar.
Welcome.
Thanks very much. It's very similar to anything that's maybe possibly regarded as special premises, like some of the nuclear facilities, defence facilities, where we carry out an assessment, prepare reports, and the building is signed off for occupation and use by a specific authority. So it's just, I think this we could get maybe a little bit thinking this is new staff, whereas it's pretty well been around. This type of governance has been around for a long time.
As Dave says, it's there if you can find it.
Yeah, I think it's an education thing, because we have gone through it after the Callan report for the oil and gas industry. We went through a lot of it with the nuclear regulator and the defence regulators with the various facilities. So I think this is going to take some time. This is not an immediate, yeah, we've got a solution to this, whether the regulator or government thinks so. This is going to take time because it's a big education thing.
Absolutely, but by recognising that the issue exists and putting forward the questions to the right people, hopefully that will accelerate that. Okay, we're going to now do the audience participation round. So everybody who's been sitting there quietly, that ends. Now you're going to get involved. George, take it away.
Yeah, so some of you have already been involved in this exercise. We had a session earlier in the year looking at what we need to perhaps consider in terms of questions. So, for example, how do we prevent incorrect design, selection and installation of fire safety products? We held some workshops at Digital Construction Week at Excel in the summer. And then following on from that, we brought together information that we'd collected from quite a decent group of experts to come up with some suggestions as to how we might overcome those things. So what we want to do, we've produced the inputs that we've had, which are quite rich from the various different people. But what we're now trying to do is finally peer group assess those so that we can feed those into the regulator as well. So the questions that we came up with was, first of all, the one that's on the screen at the moment. We then looked at how do we ensure the continuity and relationship of asset safety information through the asset lifetime. So you can see there the team that got involved in that. How do we ensure that the building safety data is live, as David was saying earlier? And also, how do we ensure that the problems with incomplete building services design doesn't impact on construction? So what we want to do over the next probably few weeks, we'd like to set up one meeting for each of these questions, and we'd like to see if the group here have got any interest in either learning from what other people have said about these things or contributing their ideas. So I'm now going to pass over to Jis. So we're hoping to recruit some people that might be interested in these topics. Jess. Are you going to present it, Jess?
Yeah, I just pasted the poll on the chat. So if you can click the link on yes or no on that first question.
So we've all got to go to the chat, have we?
No, it will pop up on the box.
It hasn't done yet.
I can see it. Can't you see it?
No.
Yeah,
Can
I
everybody
can see
see
it. Yeah, it's in the middle of the screen.
Right, so there's the
it's not working
question.
on my iPad.
There's the question. Would you like to get involved in, as George said, seeing what other people have already come up with, or contributing to the answer to that question? It's a yes or no answer. If you click one of those, give you a minute. Okay. Right, just go on to the next question. Okay, how do we ensure continuity and relationship of safety information throughout asset lifetime? So who's interested in that? Are you interested in getting involved with that? Yes or no? Okay, just next question. How do we ensure that the building safety data is live, not simply an outdated snapshot in time? So just click on the screen, yes or no. Okay, I think this is the last one. See it, Jess? How do we ensure that the incomplete building services design does not impact construction? If you want to get involved in that, click yes on the screen. If you don't, click no on the screen.
Part of this is the challenge of building services being done in work stage 5 and having therefore an impact on compartmentation and firewalls.
Oh, obviously, once you've clicked, you have to click submit. I didn't tell you that, but I hope you gathered that.
No idea. I think it was your electrician that put them on, wasn't it?
Olivia, I think you've got your microphone
Hold
on.
on. Let me have a look.
Okay.
Okay, Jess, thank you. So take the poll off and put the questions back up, please. Thank you. Okay, we're on question 4, which is a question for the HSE and BSR again. Is there any further guidance available in determining who the principal accountable person should be? I think Howard's already helped us with that, hasn't he? Sometimes this is clear. For very complex lease arrangements, this can be challenging, especially where the organisation responsible for maintenance of the external envelope and structure is not willing or competent to take on this role, even though they carry the liability. Likewise, given the impact of changes to building control and to new duty holder roles, especially overall responsibility of the client, developer, landlord, owner, principal designer and principal contractor roles, is there further guidance available? Well, it sounds like available, no. Chris, I think that would be correct that there isn't further guidance available from what you've said.
Yeah, I'm not aware of it, but again, a suggestion, and I'm not in. I've taken off my high-vis vest.
I can see you're a zebra now.
So I'm now operating as an airhead rather than a feet on the ground. But if somebody was to put a flow chart of what they think the existing situation is and send that to the BSR and the HSE to say, is this correct? That would then, to some extent, paint them into a corner. They would have to either agree that the diagram was correct, in which case we'd all know, or they'd have to disagree with it, in which case they'd have to come up with something that was the case.
Well, yeah, because we would say, why isn't it? And they'd have to say, wouldn't they?
Yeah. So say, somebody can say, and I know that Yarek is a whiz at diagram, say, this is what we think should be this is what we think is happening according to what we know so far from you. Is this correct?
I think that's
really
good.
Back to their call.
If I may, the problem you're going to have is because we pushed the HSE on when they had the open FAQ sessions on this, and their default position is that principal accountable person and accountable person are clearly defined, and therefore the key responsibility of that is the person who is in ownership or is in control of the building has a default of the accountable person unless they demonstrate that it's being delegated based on lease or duty. So from that point of view, I doubt there will actually be any more definitive on the basis that you'd have a logic tree that would have so many thousands of questions based on different scenarios of leasehold and FM or third party appointments. The key thing there is to push the owner, if it's a leasehold, into the point of being the default principal accountable person with tenancy having accountable persons. If you've then got third party maintenance, that's still reporting to the owner, and that's their default at the moment as it's stated. It's not written, it's only a verbal confirmation. Being very careful on these FAQs not to put anything in writing. So from that point of view, I think it's a dialogue that needs to be had with the owner of the building and then the individual tenants. The tenants need to take accountability for accountable person of their own demise, and then the communal parts need to be that of the owner, and that's their standpoint at the moment. I don't know if that helps or muddies the water further, but that's their current position.
David Sharp. Oh, sorry, Chris. Sorry.
I just think then, if somebody was to write down what they've said verbally and send it to them and say, is this correct? Did you say this? That will be progress. And secondly, I think the decision tree wouldn't be an oak. It will be a little bit of a sapling to get the essentials out.
David Sharp.
Yeah, so just to follow on that, my experience of the regulator or various regulators would be that their default position will be that you need as a owner to have a system in place that manages our requirement of the requirement of the legislation. It's worth a try sending something to them, but past scars say that they'll bounce it straight back bounce the question straight back onto the owners.
Dave Williams.
Yeah, just on this, I mean, I sat in a BSR meeting last week where they said that basically the one with responsibility for the structure in the exterior of the building, if there's more than one AP, becomes the principal accountable person. They did say that should you get down to the point, and I've been through this, we've been through this, our organisation ourselves with one of our buildings where we had to get the legal eagles involved, And the recourse, should you not agree on who is going to take the responsibility as principal accountable person, there is a tribunal which can decide. And I think there's been one case so far that has gone to the tribunal. How you go down that path, I'm not sure, but that was what I was told in that meeting.
It's a route. It's a route anyway, isn't it?
Yeah.
Matt Hodges long.
Yeah, just a quick one. I did put something in the chat that this question should largely have been resolved by the 30th of September, because that was the date for all of the buildings to be registered that are in occupation. So anybody that hasn't been through that process yet with an occupied building is actually committing an offence. So it seems like a good question to clarify, but one that should have been clarified in the past, not the future. So I don't know how many buildings, because the BSR haven't confirmed, how many have actually made it all the way through from that sort of initial go onto the portal and start saying I've got a building through to the end of the registration process, the full registration process. So I think that would be for the committee to tease out the structure of the 12,182 buildings that have been identified or whatever, as to what stage they're at and how many people are committing an offence for either not getting to the end of that process or not even registering their building in the first place. So what's the delta? But arguments over who the PAP is should have happened a long time ago, not now.
I think there's a lot of things that should have happened a long time ago, isn't there, Matt?
Yeah, but it was clear. It was clearly unclear, but it was clear that there was a problem to solve, because everybody knew they had to get registered by the 30th of September, albeit that was late to roll out. People knew the question, that certainly the registration questions that we're going to have to answer, not the KBI questions.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure it's a live question now, unless everyone's sitting here saying, I've got lots of applications stuck because I can't work out who the PAP is and I need clearer guidance.
Are there any landlords on that maybe are struggling with that at the moment on the call? These are questions, Matt, that have come out from the working groups. So it's clear that some of our community aren't clear on that, which is, as you say, it's probably not more guidance that's needed. It's probably just collectively helping us understand that.
Yeah, just quick. Can I come in? Like I have a second home down on the south coast. It happens to be Matt. You know it, the Victoria thing. It happens to be a 6-story block with a penthouse. So it's became an HRB when the legislation came in. Now, why is it important? When I went, I'm just a leasehold shareholder, but when I went to an AGM a while ago, they heard that I was a chartered surveyor and all of that sort of thing. And they said, would you become our director? So I said, no, sod off for a couple of years. Sorry about the bad grammar. But it was a holiday home, second home for the family. But anyway, I've now ended up a few years ago as the director of the management company that owns the freehold of the block. A few weeks ago, I got a notice to say the managing agents have made me the responsible person for an HRB. So not only am I a professional, an institute director within the thing, but I'm also experiencing now being the responsible person, the named person, you know, and the government have written to me and said, you are the named person. So we're going through, we've done the registration properly, everything's happening, and we're preparing the safety case now with consultants, chartered surveyors that I've known for a long time. I could have done it myself, I suppose, but I thought there might be a convergence of sort of responsibilities there, so I've left it to somebody else, but it's all happening quite well, and I happen to be very pleased that we don't have any flammable cladding on there. It's a brick built concrete building built about the 60s in on the south coast. But we have other problems, but that's another problem. So Matt Hodges Long has been part of, we use that as an example to early to look at a model for HRBs and digitizing and all of that. So hopefully we'll be updating on that. Matt, we'll come together, and we've gone through a few managing agents since then, so it's been a bit of a problem there. So collecting all the information and pulling it all together, that will be quite useful, I think. We're going forward to the we're meeting all the dates and all the deadlines and all that. I shudder to think what's going to happen to those that haven't even registered, and those that are going to have defective safety cases when April comes around. There's going to be a real money spinning fines and whatever for the whoever.
Let's hear from any HALAs on the call. How are you managing? Silence.
Should we try and fit another one in, Richard?
Yeah, we can do. We've kind of done a lot on question 4. So let's just whiz down to question 5. Just can you scroll? Right. The definition of high risk buildings is different for the construction phase to the operational phase. This creates complexity with the golden thread information gathered during the construction phase, as it is not always relevant to the operational phase, leading to more complex document and data structures. It is too early to tell how challenging this might be. However, has this issue been considered as part of the definition process? Panel, who wants to take that one on?
I don't know, but which information gathered during the construction phase is not relevant to the operational phase. Now, if it is less, then you've got the golden thread for the construction phase, and can you not then identify what is not, quotes, always relevant to the operational phase?
Yeah, so if I can jump in there, so because the work that we did on the Golden Thread Initiative and we're continuing to do is picking up on some of this. I've not looked at this question, but thinking about it, I think in answer to your question, Chris, there's a lot of design information and specification information that is collected during the construction phase, which from an operational point of view, although it's useful, it's not something that you would you typically be keeping up to date and using, I would say, because it may be a performance specification that has been already interpreted and delivered as part of a solution, and therefore it's the information on the solution rather than the original specification that is really a critical part of that part of the golden thread. So yeah, I don't know if that helps.
If I could also add, I mean, the key thing here is that whilst you've got the health and safety file completed at the end of the project on handover to the client, I think the guidance to most people now should be that try and ensure that the safety file actually includes the key Building Safety Act elements of the fire and structural safety element, so that if there's any significant risks that have been identified as part of the as-built as opposed to the submitted and approved designs, then those need to be captured because they'll have an operational requirement. If during construction in the as-builts, then it is purely as per design, then it's purely down to the operational controls, which is down to the O&M manuals, which should be included. So there needs to be probably far greater scrutiny of the health and safety file that's produced at the end of the construction phase for the client to ensure that any significant risk with regard to safe occupation and the key criteria that the safety case is looking for, so fire and structure and integrity, are actually identified so they can flow into your safety case report and your operational management. So the mechanisms are there. It's purely changing the mindset of those who often see the safety file as purely a document process, and the safety file should only be the as-builts that lead to the operational O&M so it can be safe occupation and use. So yes. I don't see it too much trouble. If it's digitized, great, there's no problem at all. If not, if it's the typical sort of digital file, but it's the paper copy equivalent, then it's just a case of noting them down. And it's really, this is where the PDBR and the PD under the CDM regs role needs to sort of concentrate on what significant risks are and any impact on safe occupational use.
That brings me to just...
Sorry, George.
Yeah, I was just going to say that brings me to just one thing that our smoke control and ventilation experts fed into us just this morning. And that is, as part of the safety management system, Howard, then the elements that that are the as I say, the smoke assets and the ventilation assets, they need to be included in that process, because those are the things that are probably going to be modified and changed over the period of the life of the building.
Yeah, I mean, most people are using like a gap analysis tool just to check either existing building or new build against the key criteria for the safety case report. And as long as that then becomes almost the new agenda for a safety case for the health and safety file reporting or a separate section, I think that's the easy way of demonstrating governance and effective transfer from what is the design delivery into occupation. So if you were a PAP, I'd be looking for some form of statement and confirmation of the key safety case elements of structure, integrity and fire to allow me to arrange and devise my management system that relates to what I'm inheriting. And obviously the significant risk should be pulled across anyway as part of the normal process. So it's really just amending what we have in place as a procedure, but giving it particular reference to what the safety case report needs to state, and then the ongoing safety case management system needs to demonstrate.
Excellent.
Okay, anyone else very quickly?
All right, Matt.
It's just a very quick one to say that the question clearly says the definition of higher risk buildings is different for construction and operation. On that point, I'm struggling to understand what that difference is that's being referred to. All I'm thinking of without the legislation in front of me is whether it's the inclusion of things like hospitals and barracks, etc., that are excluded from Part 4. But is there another difference that I'm missing? Does anyone know?
No.
I don't know who
this
asked
came
the question.
out of our development group, actually.
Yeah.
I'll put my hands up. I don't understand the question for that reason.
I'm just reading them. Tina.
I think I agree with Matt. The question's not very clear. I think when we refer to high risk, if you look at some of the subsects secondary legislation coming through, they're already referring back to especially referring back to 18 meters and below. It's just that question doesn't quite make sense.
Cool. No, that's good. That's good feedback.
I think that's the bit to watch out for, is the 18
sure.
meters and below is coming through.
I take your point. We'll throw that back to the development group, actually. Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone else? We've got 1 minute. Okay, well, I'm going to close it there. We've the first 4 questions, I think we're in agreement, are necessary, and with a little tweaking.
Can I have the penultimate word?
Of course, Chris.
Infographics, and infographics. I am.
And I'm with you.
absolutely bemused, and you know, I've got an English degree, and writing is my drug. And if I can't understand what's coming out of government, how on earth can the average person?
Absolutely, absolutely.
So
I totally agree with you.
So if we can perhaps as a community pull something together that you can maybe refine, Chris, then we can feed it back, can't we?
Yeah, I've never been refined, but I'll do my best.
Okay. Right, so we've got 4 questions that we're happy with, and a 5th that we need to relook at, which is good work for the afternoon, I think. Okay, well, everybody, hopefully we'll be seeing a load of you in December for those 4 meetings. Failing that, happy Thanksgiving Day, and have a good 3 months until we've got our next major event, which will be in February. Prior to that, or starting in January, we'll have our regular working group meetings, which we will keep you all informed of, and the topics we're discussing, and hopefully you can come along.
We've got an operations
anything from
one
the panel?
tomorrow. We've got an
We've got
operations
operations
one
tomorrow.
week.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're right. Yes, we have. Yeah. No, you're wrong. It's next week.
Next week.
Yeah. Okay, then. Well, thank you very much for attending. It's been a good attendance, and look forward to seeing you all soon. Cheers.
Thanks.
Thanks for your time.
Bye.
Bye now.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.